History is defined in the Oxford English Dictionary as all the events that happened in the past. But I prefer to just call it a long ass time. But when you have an ass as long as history does, you're bound to end up with some weird shit. And here are 5 of the weirdest shits that history ever dropped on the world. Let me take you back to the Roman Republic. The year is 46 BCE. Caesar and Lepidus are consuls, and the Roman calendar, well, it's a mess. It works like this. There's still 12 months, but they're split up to line up with the lunar cycles, not the solar year. Now, the science bitches in the audience will know that the solar year can't be evenly divided into lunar months.
You stupid science bitches.
So the Roman calendar only had 355 days, so every few years the calendar would drift out of sync with the seasons. But that's okay, the Romans had a solution. Every few years the Pontifex Maximus would just add in another month manually so it would all line up. But in the year 46, Caesar was Pontifex Maximus, as well as consul and dictator, and he'd been fighting war after war after war, mainly against Pompey. So the calendar had got very far out of line. 3 months out of line to be exact. Caesar was having none of this. So he made a new calendar that had 365 days, and then there was a leap year every 4 years. He introduced it in 45 BCE, but we were still 3 months out of sync. So Caesar manually added in 90 days to 46 BCE and made the year 445 days long, the longest year in history. Athena. What even is a defenestration, I hear you asking? Defenestration is the act of throwing someone out of a window. And how did we get to a point then where there was 2 defenestrations? Let me explain. In the border Gaul nightmare of the Holy Roman Empire, there were religious tensions between Protestants and Catholics. In 1555, the Peace of Augsburg meant that the prince of each state could decide their state religion instead of having Catholicism forced on them by Habsburg emperors. This worked well for a while, and the Protestants got more rights. Rudolph II even made a state-sanctioned Protestant church. Then on his death, his brother, Matthias, took over and continued improving their rights. This is until his death, and with no direct heir, his cousin and counter-reformist took over, cancelling the construction of Protestant churches and dissolving the Protestant Assembly. These tensions came to a head in 1618 when 4 Catholic lords rocked up to the Protestant Assembly. Upon arriving, they were read a letter by one of the Protestant lords, saying that they would defend their rights to the death. Demanding an immediate answer, the Catholics could not confer with their superiors, but insisted they had nothing to do with the decree removing their assembly or the church. After 2 of the Catholic lords were removed from the room for being too pious to have possibly been involved, the 2 remaining admitted to persuading the emperor. It was then decided if these lords lived, their rights be further removed. They were subsequently thrown out of the 3rd-story window. I find it pretty weird that they didn't just kill them. And the fact that this happened on multiple occasions is especially strange. The icing on the cake, however, is the fact that this is called the second defenestration of Prague, but it is actually the 3rd defenestration because the actual second defenestration was deemed not significant enough. I imagine this one is why a lot of you came. The Great Emu War of 1932. On one side we have the Australian Army, led by Sir George Pearce, armed with 2 Lewis machine guns, a pickup truck, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. On the other side, we have 20,000 emus strong, and with a can-do attitude. The situation was at a boiling point in October, after a series of raids by the emus on Australian farms and skirmishes between farmers and emus. October 1932. The military decides it's getting involved. War was declared, but unfortunately, there was rain, so fighting did not start until November the 2nd. The first half of the war began when a flock of 50 emus were sighted. Out of range, the men began firing, and they killed 0 birds. A second engagement at a closer range did allow them to kill what is referred to as a number of birds, and then a 3rd engagement on the same day saw the biggest success with estimates of up to 12 birds killed. Next, on November 4th, an ambush was planned on an emu camp with well over 1,000 emu troops. They began firing when in range. 12 birds were killed before the gun jammed. They then decided to mount a Lewis gun on the back of the pickup truck, which wasn't as fast as the emus, so they couldn't keep up. In a mobile engagement, the military used 2,500 rounds and killed 50 birds. So right now maybe 300 birds are dead, and all it costs were Many, many bullets, taxpayer dollars, and pride. The Australians withdrew and a truce was called. Of course, soon this ceasefire was broken. A second phase of the war began. With new tactics, they attacked on the 13th of November. This time, they managed to kill 40 emus. After a series of engagements, the soldiers got to a point where they were killing 100 emus per week. And by the end of the war, over 2,500 emus lay dead, but they were still victorious. After the Australian loss, the government decided the military was not the right way, and instead put bounties on emus' heads. These proved much more successful, and to this day, Australia's national bird is still considered a pest. Probably talking about plague right now isn't the best, but I'm going to do it anyway. This one's quite short. In 1518, Strasbourg, a woman began dancing alone in the street. Several young women began to join in with her dancing, until there was about 400 people dancing in the streets of Strasbourg. They danced for a long time, and when I say a long time, I don't mean like just a few hours, I mean literal days. It began to attract the attention of the local bishop, and then eventually doctors who hospitalised the afflicted. Some of the contemporary sources claim that some people even danced to their death, with some saying it would kill around 15 people per day. Latest plague, you just dance till you're dead. You meet someone in a graveyard. How did your mother die? She died in a HRE rage during the Guelders War. I'm so sorry. Thank you, young sir. How about you? How did your mother pass? The dancing plague. Okay. It's not known to this day why she or subsequent people started to follow her in dancing, but there are two theories. Some believe that the town's bread wasn't properly prepared, and a toxic and psychoactive chemical called ergo caused a temporary madness in the population. Others believe that it could be instead due to a condition called mass hysteria. This is caused by high levels of psychological stress that spreads like an epidemic. Either way, it's pretty weird. Finally, we have the Great Molasses Flood of Boston in 1919. Boston North End. A 12,000 metric ton container of molasses burst open and collapsed, probably due to an increased temperature and the subsequent expansion of the molasses. Witnesses recall hearing incredibly loud bangs before the molasses hurtled down the streets. Now, I've never even seen molasses before today, but this is how it runs. Didn't run like that on this day, though. An 8-meter high wave travelled through Boston streets at 35 miles per hour. This was strong enough to knock over buildings and bend girders. Whatever this was before, it ain't it now. The Boston Post and other local newspapers relayed that several blocks had waist-deep molasses all over. It was roughly about 3 feet deep or a metre deep. Due to both the debris, people getting stuck, and drowning, 21 people died, as well as some horses, and 150 people were also injured. Hey, my ma died in the Boston Molasses Flood. You guys got nothing. The mess was eventually cleaned up by workers, who found salt water at the now set molasses, blasting it into the harbour, which subsequently turned the water brown for the whole summer. After a while, the main flood was gone, but due to everyone having had contact with it, everywhere was sticky, from phones, door handles, toilets. That'd be a weird one. Some modern Bostonians even claim that you can still smell it to this day. But they also claim that the Red Sox didn't sign Steele, so who can trust them? Anyway, those were the top 5 weirdest moments in history, at least in my opinion. Tell me in the comments what moments you thought I missed out, or what you think is particularly weird. Also, let me know if you enjoyed this new style of video in the comments. I can always do more if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, well, I probably might still do more, but you'll just have to suffer. Remember to like, subscribe, ring the bell, share this video with a friend. Remember, I've got social medias now, so Instagram, Twitter, go follow all those, join the subreddit. You know the drill. I'm still working on my special, which I mentioned a few weeks ago, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next week, babies. Also, sorry